The famine of 1980s in Tigrai and other parts of northern Ethiopia was one of the worst humanitarian events of the 20th century, prompting a global response to bring in food assistance. According to United Nations, Ethiopia's food shortages and hunger crisis from 1983 to 1985 led to an estimated 1 million famine deaths. Millions more were displaced and left destitute, without resources to rebuild their lives.
Dawn. And as the sun breaks through the piercing chill of night on the plain outside Korum, it lights up a biblical famine, now in the 20th century. This place, say workers here, is the closest thing to hell on earth.
There's no point in fighting if the people are finished. This is the saddest time in my life.
The humanitarian catastrophe at the time was largely a result of centuries-long policy that neglected rural communities and their development. The military junta that led Ethiopia at the time, the Derg, would view the famine as an opportunity to quash the rebellion brewing in the region, bombarding Tigrayans attempting to flee to Sudan and re-invading the region while denying aid to the millions of civilians in dire need. The longest-serving Ethiopian foreign minister and high-ranking member of the Tigray People's Liberation Front recalls that period as being one of the most challenging in his life.
بر تدرئو حمدنا لحساس قيد حزب بنفرتنا قد كتقطقطو ما قد رخيونا إلنا بإرتراح نوصو شعبي محلاف قالينا أفدق سودان مسوصحو أفدق كسلا ما قد روعت ساعات تراي مسترفو أقري حقيتهم نفرت مسيان قد كتابنا أرقي فونا كم حبرة تسو كنبر يخل لي ينبرني تحطو كم تقراوايز والحبرة تسو كله قدمنا
ناب كلتا ميتش حزبي كاف ساك ساب سمانيا معلتي بأقرن دا توقع عزا ليتي كتري تحابي وعل مخنياتهم ميقاتنا يدرق متين يدودو نيران سلازي كتري تحابي وعل ليتي بتسألمات قندرق فندا قبرة ندابلة سودان خير غيرنا.
The humanitarian crisis was a wake-up call for leaders of TPLF that understood that failing to respond to food insecurity challenges at their core would have a catastrophic impact for Tigrayans that faced famine every decade. The front, along the Relief Society of Tigray, would mobilize communities in rural areas to restore degraded land and address environmental challenges in liberated areas in Tigray.
The Department of Agriculture developed a strategy that the key intervention should be the natural resource conservation, that is soil and water conservation and protection of forests, working for rehabilitation of degraded mountains and hills. So this is the major reason why natural resource conservation became an important strategy in Tigray.
The successor to the Derg, Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Front, a four-party coalition that included the TPLF, would adopt the conservation policy of the TPLF nationally. But the work in Tigray would continue at an aggressive rate, with more than 400,000 hectares of degraded land in Tigray restored. This massive investment to address environmental degradation in Tigray would pay off with the restoration of degraded mountains and landscapes and improvement of the living condition of farmers across the region. The once poverty-stricken region became a symbol of change, restoration, and improvement of life conditions of its population as the impacts of drought on livelihood of farmers were significantly reduced. Tigray's remarkable achievements in participatory land restoration would come to win the Future Policy Gold Award in 2017, the only award which honors policies rather than people on an international level. While China and Brazil won Silver Award, countries such as Australia, Jordan, and Niger won Bronze Award for their policies and effort to protect the environment.
differences, ladies and gentlemen. This year's Gold Award goes to Africa, the continent most severely impacted by land degradation. Ethiopia's Tigray region has made remarkable progress in restoring degraded land and improving food and water security. For its mass mobilization of people and its outstanding achievements under harsh conditions, Tigray's policy is celebrated with the Future Policy Gold Award 2017.
But recent findings by international and national study groups would find that much of these gains in restoration have been reversed. A recently published article by Conflict and Environment Observatory would indicate that the disruption of essential services to Tigray by the Ethiopian government, especially electricity, leading to a higher dependence on wood, has significantly reduced vegetation. The organization would use satellite imagery from now and before the start of the war on Tigray to show the devastating impact. In his most recent interview with Tigray television, Professor Mitiku Haile, a leading expert in environmental protection, says that Tigrayans may have lost more than 30 years of concerted efforts to rehabilitate land and increase the quality of livelihood.
And we have measured it at the ground level, and in some places even increased the livelihood of people, improved the livelihood, and then in terms of, particularly with honey production, with small-scale irrigation and whatnot. So these are, the concerted efforts of improving the environment, improving the landscape, and then putting it into crop production. Now, what has been done through all these years, because of the war, most of the watersheds are, which were really rehabilitated. The information that I have as an aspect of some studies made on the damage, and also through satellite images that we have obtained, quite a lot of land degradation, particularly cutting off indigenous trees.
Professor Mitiku also added that sustainability can be ensured if the aid coming from the international community can ensure that sustainable development programs and technological support is added.
We are requesting the international community to see to it that with all what the farmers are doing, in having, crop productivity enhancement activities, we are demanding that along the humanitarian aid, the international community has to say, yes, farmers of Tigray need inorganic fertilizer and chemicals to, increase their productivity and come out of, the syndrome of humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid can be in place, but if we cannot sustain the next crop production to a higher level, then there would be a perpetual hunger, perpetual starvation, and deaths of people and children, particularly of malnutrition.
After decades of efforts to eradicate food insecurity, more than 80% of Tigrayans find themselves in dire need of humanitarian assistance. More devastating has been the world's silence amidst a catastrophic humanitarian situation that may see millions dead.